Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to the channel. Another episode of Wife Talk, and I have Mrs. Moloko.
Yes, Moloko.
I got it right.
You did.
And you guys know her as Zizi. And we're going to have a very interesting, a very fun conversation. But more than anything, we just want to equip you. I think every time we think of a relationship, we think that no work goes into having a relationship or being in a relationship, but a lot of work and intention goes into it, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about something that I actually learned from her, and that's why I wanted her on this couch. Taking stock of your relationship, you know, literally sitting down, having minutes, calling a meeting, setting a date and time, venue to talk about and take stock of your relationship and all the different areas. So without wasting any more time, I hope that you enjoy this one. Share it, like, subscribe. Let's get into it. Ma'am, I'd love for you to introduce yourself. I'm sure if you have watched, I like for guests to introduce themselves, tell us what they want people to know about them, what they do, who they are, and and how long have you been married?
Okay, so my name is Zizi Moloko. I am a part-time content creator, but I work full-time in corporate. I work in finance, investment specifically, and I am married. I've been married for 2 years. It will be exactly 2 years in 2 weeks' time.
Really?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And I'm relatively new to Joburg. I literally moved up here to get married.
Do you like it?
In Joburg, definitely. I always planned to live in Joburg. It just took a little bit longer than I would have liked. But I love it here. I don't think I'd live anywhere else in South Africa.
Sure.
Except Joburg.
Sure. That's huge. Almost 2 years married.
Yeah.
How has that journey been?
For the most part, it's been great.
Okay.
It really has been great. We're still quite new, obviously, to marriage. Strangely enough, it was most difficult, I think, at the beginning. Okay. I'd probably say maybe like the first 6 months or so. But I think it's only gone up from there. There's lots of things that I've learned about myself, about marriage in general, family, and building like companionship and friendship within marriage.
That's good.
And I've learned that it takes like work, not in like the way that sometimes people would think, it constantly has to be a struggle. It's not like that. But I think like most relationships, whether it's with siblings or family, friends, all relationships do need some level of labor of love.
It definitely is a labor of love. So you've been married 2 years. I guess you kind of have explained. Where did you and your husband meet?
We met at school.
Okay.
We actually met on my very first day at varsity. We both went to UCT in Cape Town, and so he's about 3 years older than me. So how we actually ended up meeting was that he was an orientation leader, and we were in the same faculty. And he was literally my orientation leader, and we met because he was giving the group that I was in a tour of the campus and the library and all the facilities. So we met
so
then.
So instead of looking at the facilities, you're looking at the blood.
No, Chef, it wasn't like that at all. We just met, and then we didn't really build any friendship or relationship out of that. And then a few weeks later, we ended up being at dinner together because we're on the same scholarship. And that's how we became friends. And it just so happened that we ended up sitting at the same table at that dinner for our scholarship. And we only really started dating 2017. But we met in 2012 in my first year of varsity. So we were friends for a very long time. We both dated other people. He did try to start something when I was in first year. I wasn't really interested. But that's how we met.
Sure. What a very cute love story. Let's get into the video, I guess, and the crux of why we're here. So you said that you guys sit and talk about your relationship and take stock. Why is it important for you, in your opinion, to sit and take stock in your marriage?
So the right of the situation is that because we're different people, we'll naturally have different priorities and different goals. And although ultimately, because you're married, you're supposed to be working towards similar goals so that you can achieve them together, but that's not always the case. I'll make an example. Let's say with your income, one person can want to prioritize like paying off debt, and another person might want to prioritize saving a deposit for a home, you know. So, and then you guys might be working in two different directions. Of course. That's the first thing, is to kind of try to align your goals and your priorities. But it's also to actually like invest in the relationship, and to, I guess, demonstrate to each other that you want to work together, and to also like consciously and jointly decide on sacrifices. Sure. Because sometimes when we don't communicate the fact that, okay, we're working towards this goal, but I'm having to sacrifice X, Y, and Z, it can sometimes, like, in the long term, or even just the medium term, lead to a little bit of resentment. 100%. If you don't communicate to the other person that in order for us to achieve this is what I'm having to sacrifice. And it helps the other person as well to have a greater level of gratitude towards the other, and it's a two-way street. Like it works both ways. And then thirdly, I would say it's to make sure that you guys are loving each other the way that the other person needs. I'm sure we all know about love languages and the fact that, like, we're different people, so we'll have different ways of communicating and receiving love. But just because I communicate love in this way doesn't mean that when I do these things or when I say these things, that person is receiving them the way that I intend. So it's to kind of level each other, communicate each other's needs, and explicitly communicate how you want those needs to be met. That's why we do what we do. A lot of the time, I must admit that my husband is the one who initiates those conversations.
He's that kind of a
and I don't know if we would be doing them as often if it wasn't for him. And another value I feel like it adds is that it adds a level of accountability.
Oh yes.
You know, so for example, if you plan at the beginning of the year that I want to achieve XYZ and then at the end of the year you need to take stock of like what progress did we make here, what did we achieve, what didn't we achieve, why, and then like obviously adjust. I
think that's what I think funny enough, Kevin and I were having a conversation about it. We had one I think it was yesterday. We were talking about our family in general, funny enough, and the future growth thereof of our family. But just realizing how important it is to be on the same page. And I'm like, this is why it's important to have conversations about. I know sometimes it happens, Uti, okay, sometimes you'll fall pregnant without planning.
But sometimes you didn't plan.
And we didn't plan. But then there are times where some people are looking at where their lives are now and they're like, okay, is this the right time? Is this not the right time? And what I realized that sometimes it's not so much about finances or the ability to have the children, but sometimes it's about just the emotional availability.
Definitely. And the emotional investment and sacrifice that one person probably has to make more than the other sometimes.
That's the thing. So we found out there that, you know what, sometimes it's like everything may look like, you know, all our ducks are in a row. Is this something we can do? And then we forget about, but what if your partner is not emotionally available? You know, we spoke openly about the transition into parenthood and how that was so different for us. It was a roller coaster, a beautiful one at that, but it really took our marriage for a ride. On how do we rekindle again, because we're definitely not the old Kevin Buli. We're not just going to wake up and say, let's go and have dinner No, we've got someone to look after, someone to think about. Our finances are different. And then once we're done pouring into this amazing human being, we just want to sleep. And then it comes at the detriment of us. And we're talking about it that God has been so good. We've just gotten into a flow of things. And if we had to shift that, what would that look like? So I think sometimes we ignore the fact that sometimes, you know, finances may be aligned. Yes, you're working towards certain goals, but then you sit back and you think about it and you're like, geez, but am I emotionally ready? And I think that's the importance of taking stock, because you might not be emotionally ready, and that can cause more problems. So while we're there, you've already broken down why it's important. So what are some of the topics that you guys touch on when you're doing your AGMs?
So it's a variety.
And what are the subjects, or rather topics, you would recommend for people to talk about?
To touch on. So people's relationships are different, and our priorities are different, but I think the things we talk about are quite generic and are probably important in most relationships. So first and foremost, we talk about finances, and this was something that was really drilled into us when we did premarital counseling.
That's good,
to talk about money, because strangely enough, people get divorced more over money than they do over infidelity or anything else, to be quite honest. So we talk about that quite like openly.
So there's no secret accounts in your household?
No. And I know that's quite controversial, and it's something that my friend and I talk about often, but I guess I've decided that the cons outweigh the pros. But I do understand why there are sometimes secret accounts. But we talk about finances like very, very openly, and as transparently as we can, and like our financial goals. We even kind of look at the amount of money that we think we'll probably earn throughout the year, like jointly, and what are we going to do with that money. And so it's finances, and then we also discuss like our intimate life. Conversations about intimacy, to be honest, at least in my marriage, happen on a consistent basis.
Yes.
Literally weekly. Those conversations happen weekly if needs be. But we also talk about that as well in our annual quarterly reviews in a more general sense. And I wouldn't call it constructive criticism, but we try to like communicate what we need to each other. And I'm really grateful that we're able to so openly have that conversation, because and neither one of us like
feel somehow
I'm
slacking. I'm not swinging the way I'm supposed to be swinging,
you know.
But how then are you able? And I like the fact that you have said that you are able, because it's something that, for lack of a better word, is a culture. It's a culture. It's something that you're used to. If you bring it up, it's not from a spiteful place.
Yes.
And your husband understands your heart around the conversation. But how would someone bring it up, especially if they haven't done it before? Because what tends to happen in certain relationships is that the next person gets defensive, you know. And the sexual conversation is quite a broad one, because there's a lot that goes into it. But how does someone bring it up, and how do they also deal, in your opinion? Maybe that's why I want us to have this conversation, to also give people tools on how to deal with people who are defensive. And how do they tackle, you know, their lack of maybe satisfaction, or feeling like this is where you're missing the mark.
So like I was saying, I think that I'm liking the sense that we are both able to receive the conversation well, regardless of what the conversation looks like. And I think premarital counseling prepared us for that. And when we did premarital counseling, like the pastoral couple that talked us through, literally spoke us through how to have the conversation, how to communicate, and prioritizing pleasing the other person, and making your your intimacy about giving joy to the other person and finding joy in that. But I think for people who are obviously already married and they haven't been able to have that conversation, something I've learned in just communication in general, aside from talking about your intimacy, is that oftentimes it's about how you say things, more than it is about the way that you say them. So I think it's important to always talk with kindness and gentleness, and to never like knock the other person down. So to never be like, but you don't do this and you don't do this and I don't like it when you do that. So talk with kindness and with gentleness. Secondly, also like ube timing. You know, it's important to time the conversation, like.
Yeah.
And the rest of the situation that you're married, like you're going to be intimate and have sex with each other for the rest of your life. Like
actually,
there's time. Like you don't have to fix everything right this second or this particular day. You have time. And then thirdly, I'd say be patient on your end, in the sense that don't expect that just because you've communicated it this one time
that it's going to just magically be okay. I don't think human beings work like that. And to be honest, if you're married to a person, chances are they love you and they want you to be happy. But sometimes like a lack of satisfaction in a relationship, like sexual satisfaction, is rooted in culture, it's rooted in a lack of knowledge, and a whole bunch of things. But everyone is able to learn, and if the person loves you, which they probably do if you guys are married, they'll be willing. But you also need to be patient. Let's get into roles and responsibilities. Do your roles and responsibilities change when you look at them and when you audit them?
They do, and they have changed, not drastically, because of how my husband and I's time schedule and life is just kind of set up. So in my heart of heart, like I think I would kind of characterize myself as like a traditional woman. Like I like cooking, cleaning, and those types of things. And in an ideal world, I'm happy to do most of it. Not all, but most of it. So hence I have a helper. My husband also works inside the home. But our roles and responsibilities have changed quite a bit, because when I first got married, I tried to be like Superwoman. And not because anybody, to be quite honest, like forced it on me, including the people who counseled us when we were getting married, but because one, like I do prioritize those things, but also because culturally, I guess that's what women do, right? But I quickly learned I very quickly learned that it's actually just not realistic. And I realized that something that because obviously my husband and I both work income generating jobs, and so I don't have the full capacity to just like be a homemaker because I work. And I thought that I thought within myself that I had the strength to be able to do all of it, like to be able to work a corporate job and still be like the wife of my dreams. But like I said, I learned very, very quickly, and because things that I typically enjoyed started to make me a little bit resentful. You know, they started to make me a little bit resentful, and it's because I was doing all of it. And not to say that I wouldn't want to do all of it under a different circumstance, but the situation that we're in, as my husband and I are trying to build financially, we're trying to set ourselves up in such a way that I will eventually not have to work a corporate job. But we're both in agreement on that. It's not like a one-sided goal. But for now, and probably for the next couple of years, that will have to be our life. And so in our first like meet, I think we'd been married for like 4 months or so, I just had to like openly say, oh, but I cannot do this. You know, and his response was, you really don't have to.
That's the thing.
And I thought you were doing it because like you choose to, but you really don't have to. And it was him who said to me, we're hiring a helper so that you don't have to come home and do laundry and iron and clean,
and
etc.,
you're right,
etc.
because sometimes it is unrealistic. I think when we have to, I think sometimes because we're women, we go to work probably the same hours as men, but we're still expected to do more
in the home. Yes.
And that kind of makes you an unhappy person. And I'll say, for example, I was able to, without Essie being there, before Essie came, after work, do this, do that, edit, and great. And I'll still, you know, on the weekends be able to shoot certain content and this and that, because I am working full time, so I only have time to do this. And I could do a million other things. And then it got to a point where, okay, now the baby's here. And her,
should I change the game completely?
Exactly. Now she needs a routine. We have to fit an entire human being schedule in the same 24 hours that we had before.
Yeah.
And her winding down routine doesn't change. She winds down at about from 5:30, and that's when we start your dinner, your bath time, your bedtime routine, things like that. And I was like, so between 5 and 7, where am I gonna cook? When am I going to cook?
It's not possible.
When am I going to be able to do what I need to do? Should I have deadlines? Should I probably need to go to an event? How do we make this thing work? And there'd be times where I'd honestly say, today for dinner, it's Nando's. If I keep budget in Nando's, it's noodles.
Yeah.
We can do both, because that's what the reality brings. And I think sometimes it's about talking about your expectations and your frustrations, because I do remember in the beginning when she was small, because you know they are quite the demanding people, you don't understand how drained you can get. And he'll come back from work and he's having a great day and I'm like,
as he should.
But the heart in which I was like, take your kid, was not from a good place. Oh, dad's home here, your turn, now I can do. It's like, you've done nothing. I've been doing everything, so you must take your kid. You understand, and that was one of the challenges that we faced. All these things that we went through without having had the conversation of what do our roles look like? What do our responsibilities look like right now? And I think that's an important conversation to have. Another important one that we don't talk about are our social lives and the friendships. Sometimes I realize certain parts of myself that, again, because my husband works, I tend to have a little bit more extra time or free time for free time on the weekends for friendship, and then when he's around I'm like, I kiss the streets goodbye. But how do you guys talk about your social life? Do you talk about, and especially because yours differs quite, you know, from his. Are you guys social people? Is this something that we need to talk about? Sometimes you find extremes where people in a relationship or in a family, one will end up going out more than the other. One will end up bringing more outsiders in than the other. And it makes the other uncomfortable. And then so about tricky. Do you guys discuss things like that? But if not, what would you say about that?
To be honest, we don't really discuss that much, but I think it's because my husband and I are very similar in personality. We're both quite introverted, and so it just works in that sense. So I think we probably have the same quantity of friends. But we both don't really spend time outside of the home, unless we're working. So and this is something I don't really think about, because we don't talk about it because we're so similar. I think it would be tricky if I was married to an extrovert. I think it would be very, very tricky, because I don't like people in my house. Really, I don't like people in my house. Like, I'm happy to have family over and friends over.
Close friends.
But like after like 3 or 4 hours, people must go home. You know, so hence whenever we really have like social gatherings or even family gatherings, we prefer to go to other people's house, and we're both like that. You know, so and I guess maybe this is a chance for me to reflect on how lucky I am, because I don't even have to have that conversation.
Sure.
My pastor's wife, when they were counseling us, she mentioned that, because she's also quite introverted, I think much more than I am, and she had actually been engaged before to somebody else, before she ended up marrying who she married. And the guy she was engaged to before, like, they loved each other dearly, but they were just so different. In the sense that, like, he wanted to spend all his free time outside of work, like outside. He wanted to be with friends, with family, to go skiing, to go mountain biking, to go do all these things, and she just wanted to be at home and drink tea and watch TV. And she literally decided to end their engagement mainly for that reason, because she thought that this is never gonna work. And whenever she tried to, like, adjust herself and be him, she'd be extremely miserable. And when he tried to adjust himself and be her, he'd be extremely miserable. But with that being said, also chatile ketile.
And that's the thing.
And you have to make it work, which will entail, like, I guess, both of you making some level of a sacrifice.
100%.
Yeah.
Somebody needs to come to the party, because I like how you say you guys are on the same page.
Yeah, because we're very similar personalities.
I think my husband and I are also quite on the same page. We, on the other hand, are outdoorsy people.
Okay.
We like being, even if it's just us.
Yeah.
Outside. We need to be outside. Picnicking, adventure, those are our kind of things. That's what kind of fuels us, which is amazing. We are both happy for people to be, our close people to be in our space, you know. Outdoors are always open for those that we love, and I mean that's just us. You know, if you need a place to host, come. That's us. And I think it works. But if you are on the opposite side, I think that's where it matters to have this conversation. And if you're not married yet and you're dating someone who you can see is like this, don't think, no, we'll figure it out when we get there. Because that's just,
and don't hope for the other person to, like, change once you guys get married, because it's not gonna happen.
It's not gonna happen. I think that's what we do. We create these fairy tale scenarios in our head, and we hope and anticipate that your partner will be something who they didn't say that they are. You, in your mind, sign them up to be that person. And then you're frustrated when you're married, and now all of a sudden umuntu yapuma, and you're like, he's always out though, but you understand that you married an extrovert. I low-key, like even as much as I complain, I know my husband can't dance, but I knew about it. I knew about it. He can't dance, and you know, he always says, and it's too late. It's too late now. That is my cross. I wasn't gonna change. Funny enough, it's crazy because I don't ask him about it, because we always used to spend time together doing non-dancing things. So that now when we're in one another's space, now I could see, I'm like, dang, that's the one thing I didn't think about that. But that's where I think it's important. I think even in our social lives, one of the things he spoke to me about, Kev, was that with one thing that we will work on is telling one another when we're going to have certain people over.
Yes,
and definitely. They can vet whether they want that person, because it's their space as well.
I can't imagine, like, bringing someone to the house and I didn't tell my husband. Like, I can't imagine, and vice versa.
But it happens, and I mean, we've experienced that a couple of times for us to get to that conclusion where we're like, no, we're not doing this anymore. Even though sometimes it's out of, because it's just who we are, but sometimes we forget, Buti, this is also their space. You know? They also need to feel comfortable in their home. So you can't just, even if you bring someone, you call, or before you even agree, you call me like, are you okay? I know you're not going to be here, for example, maybe he'll be at work, but by the time you get back, if we haven't wrapped up the conversation,
is this okay?
Or is this setup okay? Because sometimes your person just wants to come home, take off their clothes, sit, they have a movie in mind, and there you are.
And they just want silence.
Exactly. And there you are, and now they have to entertain your guest as well, which I think is not fair.
I agree.
Definitely, I think speaking about those things, the friendship dynamics, the social dynamics also matter in a relationship. So yeah, I think we have touched bases, and I think I had Zizi on here just so that you can get a bit more understanding as to why it matters to have conversation. And I think whether you're dating, it's important to have certain conversations, or whether you're engaged, it's important to have these conversations.
Especially when you're engaged.
It's more especially because that's when you have to make the decision to say, is this what I'm going to stand for? Is this what I'm choosing to commit to for the rest of your life?
Literally.
It really matters how your partner chooses to handle the finances. And I think even when you're engaged, what are our finances going to look like for?
And it's important to and it's important to be on the same page about even how you will handle finances and the level of transparency that you guys expect of the other person. Because obviously, like, different married couples handle their finances differently, and there's different strategies and methods that work for different people and different couples, but it's important to be on a similar page.
And I think similar page, like you mentioned, whether we're saying no, this year we're squashing whatever debt because we can't run away from it. People get into marriages and they still have maybe student debts that they have to pay off, car debt, whatever the case may be, they have to pay things off. So we need to be realistic about those things and say, is this what I'm getting into my... When you get into a marriage, you understand that also, for better or for worse, if your partner has debt, you have debt. If they have a loan and you don't have a loan, you now have a loan. And that's something that, whether you like it or not, depending on also the contract that you're married in, but just in general, because you are saying, I'm one with this person, your burden is my burden. And am I willing to go on this journey with you so that we can have a clean slate? And it's risky. It's marriage. But when you do it with the right person, it works out well. And I think that's important to have these conversations. So with these points, I would suggest, because like I said, when I saw Zizi share about it, I said we're taking it on in our marriage, not just in Jan, because that's what we would do in Jan. Like, okay, so what are our plans for the year? Literally once every 3 months, I want to be intentional about it. So all of Zizi's details, like I said, are going to be right here at the bottom of the screen, and they're also going to be in the description box below. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Gracing us on this episode of Wife Talks. We hope that you have learned something. Share it, like, comment. Tell us if you're taking anything for your own relationship, or if you're taking down mental notes so that you can come to this video when the time is right. Till next time, bye.
Bye guys, thanks for watching.